This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so thanks everyone for joining us today on November 4th, 2021. This is our monthly business town hall. I'm excited to jump into a lot of different topics today. We have some special guests that will take the reins and share about what's happening in their respective departments and how that relates to our businesses and opportunities for businesses to participate. I could start with just the ground rules and our agenda. This meeting will be recorded. Did I skip that already? No, I didn't. Here we go. Let's do that first. This meeting is being recorded, and we will, since we're a small group, we're happy to take Q&A. Just feel free to unmute yourself to share. You're also welcome to submit questions in the chat box. During the Q&A, again, we'll take them as we're going through the slides. So we'll have a couple different speakers here, and at the end of each of the conversations, feel free to participate. We'd love to have that. Our agenda today, we'll run through just a quick economic development update, at which point I'll hand it off to Transportation and Mobility, Kate White, who I'll let you introduce yourself at that time, followed by Erica Satin Hernandez, who is also with us today, who is our ARPA specialist, who will share kind of an overview of what's going on with ARPA and how that relates to businesses here in Somerville. And then, as I mentioned before, we have Margaret LaForest here from the Mass Office of Business Development, who will be able to share about other resources available to businesses. So other city and economic development staff with us today, I have William Blackmer, who's our workforce development coordinator, who will share a little bit, and as well as Rachel Nad-Carney, who is in attendance. I know that Daniela should be on her way if she's not already here. Sorry if I missed you. No, not yet. And Tom, I don't believe is going to be able to join us. But without further ado, let's get to it. So just a brief overview of economic development resources. This one we mentioned last month as well, but just it continues to. We still have a small trickle of folks applying and receiving funds for our Small Business Relief Fund Round 3. We have been able to deliver over $2.3 million of funding in this round. And so, we still welcome applications, and you can find the details to apply at somervillema.gov/bizrelief. Now, maybe William, if you're open to it, I'd love to have you share just briefly about the updated JCRT website. Would you be all right for that?
Yeah, that sounds good. There we go. Yeah, so JCRT stands for the Job Creation and Retention Trust, which is one of the city committees that's working on workforce development initiatives. And we've recently just updated our website. The link is there in the slide, but that will allow you to learn a little bit more about the work that we've been doing, our most recent investments in adult education and job training. And yeah, overall, there's been a total of $1.3 million invested since spring 2020 in those different areas. So you can find out more information on the website. You can see what programs we are currently funding and links in how to connect with those programs if you're interested in learning more.
Awesome. Thanks, William. And you'll see on our, there'll be an announcement through our newsletter that's going out on Tuesday related to JCRT as well. If you're not already signed up, although I think many of you are, to get our bi-weekly newsletter every 2 weeks, and with great resources for folks related to your business. The last thing on our list here is the cybersecurity best practices for restaurants. It's built towards restaurants, but I think it is relevant for any organization who deals with customer data, as well as important financial data for your employees. This was put together by the Massachusetts Restaurant Association as well as Dell Technologies, and it's really some great tips on how businesses can better protect themselves from phishing scams, but also ways, kind of the best practices in IT security relevant to business owners. This is just a free kind of guide. They have a kind of a very beginner version and then the kind of the second version. So if anyone is interested, we welcome folks to be able to get that resource to apply to their business. A few other just events coming up that may be relevant. Heading into the holiday season, this may be something especially useful is a resource that is run by Google, the Partner with Google program, to share about tips for selling products online using Shopify. They have a variety of e-commerce tools, as well as just an update on how to best be listed through Google services. That will be held on Tuesday at noon. I know is not always the best time, but this will also be recorded and is available from Google. But the link to register is here. And the last one is another event called Understanding Business Financials, November 18th, 10 a.m. This is put on by SCORE. It's really just kind of the basics. It's free. All of these events are free for reading a bank's financial statement or how to tips for balancing a budget. Any of these ways would be useful to applying to your business. It could even just be a refresher for those folks who could use it. Myself may be included. Awesome. So I guess maybe I'll pause before I hand it over to Erica. Was there any questions on things that we have from economic development side? Okay, seeing none.
I actually have a quick question, Nick.
Oh, nice.
Is it helpful for me to put some of those links into the chat? I don't have it as them being clickable on my end, but I don't know if I'm doing something wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think it's
okay.
For anyone furiously clicking away, I apologize. They will need to be populated in the chat. So if you're able to do that,
Sure.
that would be awesome.
Great.
We'll also make this available online too for folks to get. But for those lucky folks who are here today, they can get it firsthand. Awesome. All right. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Erica Satin Hernandez, who is our American Resource Plan Act is not correct, Rescue Plan Act, to share a little bit about ARPA. You may recognize Erica from our the kickoff meeting that we had on October 27th, as well as her time with Health and Human Services. So Erica, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you. Yes, I didn't notice that either. So we'll let the record reflect that it's the American Rescue Plan Act. So thanks for having me. I'm the ARPA specialist. And so I'm just going to give a really quick overview of the background on what ARPA is, how it might, or the funds that the city has available, how it might influence your business, how you may be interested in connecting up with ARPA, and then generally just having ways to stay involved. So the American Rescue Plan Act was passed earlier this year, but we are still in the process of getting the portion of funds that come directly to cities and counties. And Somerville will receive $77.5 million in ARPA funds for specifically the state and local fiscal recovery funds to aid in COVID recovery post-pandemic, well, as we are moving to a new stage. The timeline is such that the funds have to be obligated by the end of the year in 2024. and they have to fully be spent by the end of the year in 2026. That should be December 31st, my bad. And so the way that we'll be looking at the funding is that there are 4 large buckets and categories of spending, and each project that you apply for has to match up with the right category and subcategory. And of course, given that it's COVID recovery funds, there has to be a direct tie to COVID related impacts. And so of the 4 categories, the first one I think will really be the one that influences your work the most. And so that includes responding to the pandemic and its negative economic impacts. So I pulled out a couple of subcategories here that I think are most relevant to businesses that you may be interested in. This is in the negative economic impacts category, number 2. And so a couple examples being job training assistance, small business economic assistance, and that can be general, and aid to in particular industries. And you'll notice also that there is this asterisk and this caret on some of the categories. Those denote different special requirements. And so the asterisk means that if you're applying under that category, you have to provide some sort of evidence base to show the need for your project, as well as the rationale as to why your intervention will be successful. And the caret requires that you add some information on income and demographic guidelines to make sure that you're targeting highly impacted populations. And so that can be working within a qualified census tract as related to HUD. And I think there are other opportunities too. And I'll be the person who would work through that with you guys. There are 3 other categories that I wanted to just show here. I think they're probably slightly less relevant. One is providing premium pay for essential workers. There's still a little bit more guidance there that's needed. And so we can look at that when the time comes. And then 2 that probably are not relevant are replacing lost revenue in government, which is something that the local municipality would apply for the revenue replacement, and also infrastructure investments specifically around water, sewer, and broadband. We can move forward when you're ready. And so overall, community engagement is key. And so the timeline that we have so far, Nick mentioned that we had the kickoff forum last week, where just presenting the basics on ARPA, starting to get some feedback and opening up that discussion. And then over the winter, between now and February, we're going to be hosting a series of focus groups, pop-up events, and other just generally more targeted community engagement efforts. This is one forum just starting off, just to give you guys some information, and then in the future would love to connect back again to think about ways we can receive feedback from the business community about ways that you want to see the ARPA funds spent, part of the larger goal of understanding the community's values around this funding. In February, we'll be presenting back to let people know what we've heard and continue to make priorities, and then get a final report on our findings of the community engagement process, and come out with a statement of community values that applicants will use when they're applying to ensure that the project that they are proposing meets community needs and meets community values. And so there are a couple of ways at this point to get involved. Thank you for posting the ARPA website in the chat. That website is dynamic, and so it has some more background information. It's also got, it's going to have upcoming opportunities to get involved. We had the kickoff forum posted there as an example, and other public events will be posted there as well. We've also got right now a budget tool on there. And so the question being, if you could spend all the ARPA funds yourself, what percentages would you assign to each of the subcategories? So we're getting some really interesting responses there that you can look at all of the eligible uses and tell us about your values of how you want to see the money spent. That'll be up a little while longer, and eventually, probably in a couple weeks, we'll move into a little bit longer of a survey on interests. And so we're still getting the slides and recordings up on the city website from the kickoff forum, but that'll be coming up on that general link, somervillema.gov/virtual, where you can see all of the upcoming and past virtual town halls. And more information will also be posted in the city's mailing lists, which is always a good idea to have. And so the link is down there as well. And then just on this last slide, I've just got my contact information, as well as our office's director, Austin, who is not able to be with us today. But my role as the ARPA specialist is to connect with potential applicants to help make sure that we can create a great proposal, one that meets community needs and values and can successfully be funded, executed, and evaluated. And then, of course, right in the moment, also working on our community engagement process. So I would love to talk with any of you further and answer questions right now if you have them, and then be available by email and otherwise to connect again.
Awesome. Thanks, Erica. Yeah, pause right here for a little while if there are any questions. I guess I had one for you, Erica, would be, what is probably the best way for businesses right now who again, this is a significant amount of funding that will be coming to Somerville. What would you say is the best way for folks to get involved in this process from a business perspective?
Yeah, so the application will be coming up in a couple of weeks. We're still finalizing all of our elements. And, in the meantime, we are with this community engagement process, I think there are a couple ways to get involved. One can be to attend a public meeting or a focus group that's promoted and open to the public. Alternatively, we can set one up for you. If there's a meeting like this or another meeting that you may, or I guess convening of businesses in the area that is already, well utilized and popular, and you'd like our team to come and lead a focus group there, or just generally have a conversation and get some feedback, I would love to set that up. And also, if you just have some ideas that you want to share and make sure that gets into, our notes and our awareness, you can always use my email at any time to send those ideas off. And I also saw a question from Jessica, and then Michael.
Thanks so much, Erica, for being at this meeting and for your work in general. What an incredible opportunity for our community. And thank you for highlighting for us the particular topics where there might be a business community connection to the purposes of these funds. I had a question digging a little bit deeper into that exact idea of that category where small businesses could be, or I'd say the business community as a whole could be invested in with some of these funds. My question is when it says economic development assistance on your slide that you presented, can you give us any more context for that? Is that the straightforward like technical assistance or grants or loans that we would expect? Specifically, I'm curious to understand if the built environment of a business district is within that category.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the exciting strengths about this funding pool is that there are, these subcategories, but within that, it's pretty flexible at this point. And we are still waiting. We're using the interim final rule, and we're waiting on the final rule, which hopefully will come through soon. But as of now, the categories seem pretty open. And so I think, we obviously need the direct tie to COVID, but I could imagine us hearing a good argument for saying, COVID has influenced the way people work, travel, shop, utilize our businesses. And so in order to make our businesses more successful and recover from COVID properly, we need to make infrastructural changes to accommodate, new clientele. I could imagine seeing that something like that come through. And I think in that kind of case, especially from your organization's perspective, I could see, as opposed to kind of individual businesses applying for small amounts, I could see a collaborative applying for a more comprehensive coverage of a project for numerous businesses. Again, there's still some things to work out and check out, and more to see. But I think so far that sounds like a reasonable project. I'll also mention, which I think is important to say, that in the final rule, we'll still be waiting for the reporting requirements. And so it's remains to be seen what will be required for grantees to report back on. There are some basics that we are aware of, more narrative stuff, the numbers on who has been influenced by the project, et cetera. But question remains if there will be, elevated to kind of a CDBG type reporting level, or if it'll be less intensive than that. So I think having a collaborative and larger reaching project is also helpful in the way that we may handle evaluation and reporting out, and having, the capacity to potentially do a larger scale reporting back. Does that kind of get at what you're?
Thanks. Anyone else?
Hi, Erica. Great stuff here. Very exciting. Question about, you mentioned here that starting this month, there would be focus group pop-ups and targeted community engagement. Where can we find a schedule for this and more info for when this might be happening?
Yeah, so we're scheduling right now. And so dates are just being set now, but I'd like to get those up on the ARPA website. There'll probably be a few that I anticipate will be more of like your closed constituent meeting, if we're going to an English class as an example, that might be something where we don't have necessarily, we're not necessarily promoting that outside, but I think there are lots of more public opportunities. I know Summer Streets is over, we missed that, but other sorts of outdoor events, et cetera, where we'd like to show up and do some activities. So I'd like to be getting those on the ARPA website when they are available, but we're still in the process of starting to schedule those with our partners.
Awesome. Thank you guys both for those questions. Those are great. Anyone else before we turn it over to Kate?
I got one.
Oh, go ahead. Thanks,
Yeah,
Tom.
Tom Bent. I just kind of going back to the small business economic assistance. I'm trying to get a better handle on exactly what all that means, or are you still waiting for more guidance from the feds on that?
I'm going to pull up our compliance document right now and see what else is in there for specifics, but mostly the categories are pretty broad. Like and the compliance document that I'm working off of is also on the ARPA website. Or I actually have to update, push the update out, but it will be on there later today. And that they, have these subcategories, and it's somewhat left at that. But I can say, looking at the reporting requirements and the data that they'll want to see, the particular small business economic assistance subcategory 2.9. Let's see. They'll be looking for a brief description of the structure and objectives of the assistance programs. The example that they give is grants for additional costs related to COVID-19 mitigation, pretty vague. The number of small businesses served by the program, and description of the approach in ensuring that aid to small businesses responds to a negative economic impact of COVID. So those are the 3 reporting requirements, basically how many businesses, how does it relate to COVID, and what are you doing? So it seems like many of these categories are very open to interpretation, as long as they meet those 2 basic requirements of COVID recovery link and generally serving the category as described. So that's.
So on that, so businesses would have to basically apply to the city. Is that how that would work? Okay.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple ways that we could do this. And I think, certainly we're accepting applications from the public including businesses, for smaller scale projects or individual level projects. And so if, a business said, hey, I want to apply to retrofit our space to be more COVID compliant and safe for our staff or something, that totally makes sense. But I do think there is a really good space here for saying, as an example, I guess I don't want to put something out there that may not be appropriate, but thinking about, a business association, a support entity for businesses in the city may want to aggregate applications from businesses that they work with, find a way that they all kind of relate and create one large application on their behalf to then contract out and make sure that all the needs are met, as a compelling application. I could definitely see that happening.
So it would actually be, like business associations, like the chamber, the different Main Street programs. They would be, so I would see it that they would have to work closely with the city, so that, and then, I'm sure the city's going to have some kind of application format, all that, and then the city would have to be able to articulate to the different associations and ultimately to the businesses, what you can apply for, what you can't apply for, and how that money has to be spent. And then at the end of the day, I would think then each business would have to report back how that money was spent to the association, and the association back to the city. Is that how you kind of see this? I know it's still kind of up in the air, but is that kind of how you see it going?
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. And I think in a lot of ways that's advantageous to be able to, take a little bit of the heat off of businesses alone, to be kind of going it alone, I guess, through the process and through of application as well as reporting and evaluation. And I think the support of kind of that collective or third party, the examples that you mentioned, I think that would be really valuable in making sure that everyone's on the same page and moving forward. And I do, at this point, believe that, there is some openness to, apply for creative projects. And that will be, as we continue to get more information from the feds, that'll be my job, to connect with, whether it's an individual applicant or a coalition, for a larger scale application, to figure out, we are all the ducks in a row. And the application in a couple of weeks coming out, but as it stands, pretty standard, I guess, in terms of, your grant asks of, the applicant information, your description, need justification, timeline, budget, stuff of that nature. And then categorizing into these category and subcategory, making sure that all fits. And then the few special reporting requirements as appropriate. So that'll probably be the general layout of the application.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Erica, I again, thank you so much for joining us. If you're able to stick around and answer additional questions, I want to make sure that we give enough time to Kate and Margaret too. But also, if you need to go, that is also okay. And we have your contact here, so folks can reach out specifically if they have additional questions, and can stay tuned with opportunities to continue to be involved and share how ARPA and this kind of once in a generation funding opportunity could support businesses. And I see in the chat you are going to stick around, so that's awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, I'm going to hand it off to Kate White, who is our outreach coordinator with the mobility team. And Kate, do you want to share a little bit more about yourself and then get right into it?
Yeah, thank you so much. And totally give me a time check. I want to make sure there's enough time for Margaret as well. But as Nick said, my name is Kate White. I'm the new community outreach coordinator for the mobility division. For some of you who might not be familiar who the mobility division is, we're housed in the city's Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development. And we focus on advancing Somerville's goal to become the most walkable, bikeable, transit accessible city in the nation. So our work is guided by the mobility goals, outlined in the city's 5-year and annual plans, and consistent with Summer Vision, as some of you might know, the city's comprehensive plan, Somerville Climate Forward, the city's official plan to eliminate carbon emissions, and the city's Vision Zero Action Plan, which we're really excited that got endorsed this year, which is to eliminate crashes resulting in severe injuries and fatalities. So I recently joined the team. I came from a regional transportation planning agency focusing on public outreach, and prior to that work, I was in a variety of community engagement roles at nonprofits, from affordable senior housing to food justice. I'm a resident of Somerville, and I'm super grateful for this opportunity to represent the city that I care deeply about. Excuse me. My goals with this role are to enhance our public outreach by making our activities and engagement opportunities more equitable and effective. We're striving to create inclusive public outreach programs, incorporating new tools, integrating creative opportunities, and building robust partnerships. And in particular, I'm working to bring in community members who've historically been excluded from planning processes and meet people where they are. I'm excited to come here today to meet and connect with you and more of our community's businesses. I wanted to share some of our upcoming projects and plans we're beginning to work on that we would love to have you engage in. So we're focusing on some city projects, but I want people to know too that our office facilitates public engagement on state agency efforts, including the Green Line extension, Silver Line extension, the MBTA bus network redesign, the Mystic River pedestrian bridge, the Kensington Connector Safety Initiative, and the McGrath Boulevard. So I'm going to go through these in calendar order of upcoming public meetings, but information of these projects are all available on our Summer Voice page, and I'm just going to pop those in the chat if you want to follow along while I talk about it. So first, I wanted to talk to folks about our citywide and curb use study, and this is an effort to comprehensively understand the parking system in Somerville and make recommendations that will guide the city in bringing its parking policies in alignment with its city goals, community values, and future needs. The study will use data from a complete inventory of parking regulations on city streets and parking utilization counts from select areas across the city. And this study is being informed by members like you, the public, and expert input, as well as our parking study task force. This is a 21-member group consisting of representatives from the City Council, the business community, the Council on Aging, the Commission for Persons with Disabilities, the Pedestrian Transit Advisory Committee, the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and many city departments. So these first community meetings are coming up actually next week. And so please join if you're interested, but if you're not able to make it, all the recordings we posted on the website, and there'll be future opportunities to engage. We have a lunchtime option and an evening option, the first one being on November 9th, and then the second being on November 10th. And at this meeting, consultants and city staff will introduce the study's scope and timeline, share the results of the citywide curb inventory and existing conditions analysis, and we're inviting folks to share their needs, goals, and concerns with living in, working in, or visiting Somerville and using the parking and curb system. I've got some links for you all that I'll make sure to pop in the chat at the end for these specific projects. Next, I want to talk about the Highland Ave redesign project. So the city is reconstructing Highland Ave from Hamlet Street to Cutter Ave. This work is part of the larger Spring Hill sewer separation project. So some of you might have been involved in some of the public meetings that occurred at the end of 2020 on this. But this effort is to upgrade the aging underground sewers and stormwater infrastructure and better manage flooding events. So some of the underground work on parts of the island is underway, but the streetscape design has been incorporated into a standalone project based on the extensive feedback the city received. And so the mayor and city council both endorsed a community-led vision for Highland Ave that includes pedestrian safety measures, MBTA bus improvements, and protected bicycle lanes. So to begin this project, we want to host a community meeting to gather input, share the project timeline, present some of the parking data information we've collected, and share some customer and business survey response summaries. So please join us. This is on Wednesday, November 17th at 6:30, and I'll make sure to add the link in the chat at the end of this. And then my last project update is on the Gilman Square street design. This is to continue some of our work on the Gilman Square neighborhood plan, but we're embarking on a new street design in the square. So we'll have an upcoming public meeting on November 22nd at 6 p.m. where we'll provide an update on present and future projects in Gilman Square, present the feasibility study for an accessible path from Marshall Street to the Medford Street Bridge and community path extension, and discuss options for protected bicycle lanes on Medford Street and Pearl Street from School Street to Skilton Ave intersections. So please join us again and share your input, but if you can't make it, all of this will be available online and there'll be more opportunities to engage. So lastly, I just want to talk about a few of our plans. As I mentioned at the top of my presentation, we're really excited about our Vision Zero program. Again, this is our strategy to eliminate traffic fatalities and severe injuries. Designing our streets for safety is critical to eliminate traffic violence. We also combine this with education. So our team is sending out a helpful handout to all Somerville residents in the upcoming, by the end of this year. And this will share with them different ways to ensure that everyone can move around safely in our city. So in the meantime, if you want to learn more, please visit our website at somervillema.gov/vision0. And lastly, today, I just wanted to share a bit about that the city is starting to develop a citywide bicycle network plan. And this is to increase connectivity and close gaps for people traveling by bike. We conducted a series of handlebar surveys kind of right in the middle of last month, where people went out and rode a variety of routes and evaluated street segments. This is just the beginning, and we plan to host more handlebar surveys and other opportunities for engagement to gather input on what people are looking for while biking in the city. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me either directly by my email, which is right there in the slide, or also at transportation@somervillema.gov. We'll also be posting more about this plan on our websites and sending out more information and communications. So that's a whole bunch of information about projects and plans. But I'm really excited just to connect with you all, really excited to be on board and to work with you all as we develop more and more of our transportation options.
Awesome, you covered a lot there, Kate. Thank you. Folks, any particular questions on what Kate just shared with us on the many ways that the mobility team is working to improve safety on our streets?
And I just want to add, Nick helpfully put in the slide how you can get alerts on ongoing construction. So please definitely sign up for alerts, and you can also subscribe to the city construction newsletter.
Nick, it's Tom Bent. I just want to welcome Kate. The City of Somerville stole her from the MPO, which I sit on. And Kate did a great job at the MPO, and I know she'll do a great job for the city. So welcome aboard, Kate.
Thank you, Tom. I'm really excited to be there. I wouldn't say they stole me. I definitely was very excited to come along and really excited to work with you all.
Great.
Thanks for that, Tom. Yeah, any questions, guys? The one that probably is most relevant to everyone in the room is the citywide parking and curb use study. So that's happening. I think you said both. There'll be 2 listening sessions on Tuesday at 12:30, and then Wednesday at 6. Is that correct?
That is, and I know that conflicts with one of the webinars that you shared, the lunchtime one. But they're listening sessions as well as interactive. So you can come with breakout sessions to kind of dig into some of the questions around, how we use our curb.
Nick, it's Tom again. Just a couple of things that I've heard feedback from people, not just businesses, but also residents. There's a lot of concern about the Highland Ave redesign and the loss of parking spaces or the potential loss of spaces. And then, I assume you're looking at Highland Ave in sections because, we right now with the new high school and the loss of parking with that, there's already, a lot of issues, not only with residents, but with teachers. And then ultimately business owners. And one of the biggest things I get from business owners is that, the city has always encouraged and added into zoning, ground floor retail everywhere. And, one of the big problems they have is a lot of ground floor retail is more of a convenience type of thing. You're driving by that dry cleaner on your way home from work, and it may not even be somebody that lives in Somerville. They might live in, Arlington and cut through Somerville to go to Boston. And those businesses, because now, parking's been taken away from them, are seeing a real impact in their businesses because that convenience of being able to, pull up, run in and go has gone away. So I think what, people are hoping is that just one segment of transportation users, are not just being listened to, and you're listening to everybody as a whole, because that's some of the complaints that I've heard, that it's all about bikes, which is fine because, a lot of that infrastructure is designed there for that. And everyone knows everybody's pushing that way, but not everybody rides a bike, especially elderly people. And I hear it all the time about, hey, I got to go up to City Hall and pay my tax bill, but I can't park anywhere, so that's an issue that's ongoing. And so, I think, and it's also, and I'm putting it out there for the businesses that they need to be more involved so that, what's good about a lot of the virtual meetings now is there's really no excuse not to jump on a meeting. It's not like you have to show up at 6 o'clock at night at City Hall or somewhere else. So I want to encourage, all the business people that are on here to make sure that they're into these, they get these links so that they know when these meetings are, so that they can bring their concerns forward, so that, people are hearing it and they're not just hearing from one side of the issue. Thanks.
Yeah, Tom, I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I completely understand, one of the things we want to think about is how do we really effectively, think about not only design for the street, but think about the needs right now and the needs in the future.
Right.
And so, and one thing actually Nick and I were talking a little bit about is that I really appreciate you encouraging these virtual meetings, but I also recognize that business owners and business workers are busy. It's been a really tremendously hard nearly 2 years. So I'm happy to come out and talk to you. If you're in the middle, you're prepping for, I actually used to work in an industrial kitchen. So if you're out and you're prepping in the morning and you need you just want to talk about it, I'll come and talk to you, because I get that these things, it can be deep, we deeply care about how we move around, where we live, where we work. And so I really want to hear, your thoughts, your interest, and how we can all work together to meet all of those needs.
Great, Kate. Thank you. We'll make sure we take you up on that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Any other questions? And full disclosure, I can't see if anyone's raising their hand. I have my full screen with the slide deck, so you'll have to unmute yourself and share. I should have probably said that earlier on, but so if I missed you earlier, sorry about that.
I just have a comment. My name's Christine. I'm the owner of Hair by Christine & Co. on Highland Ave in Somerville. We just were made aware that this was happening this week. So I reached out to I've been in Somerville for the last 10 years as a business owner. And it was crazy how many of the people on Highland Ave that own businesses had no idea that this was coming. So we are forming our own little coalition so that we can hopefully get Kate to talk to us about what's going on. I know that I've already sent out a mass email to my client list to see what their thoughts are about what happens to my business if there's no parking. I will say so far 45% of my business does not live in Somerville, so that is a huge chunk of our business that we could potentially lose if we lose more parking on Highland Ave. I also employ 15 people and only 3 of them live in Somerville. So that is also a huge issue for us. Anybody who needs to get a business permit to park in Somerville knows how atrocious that process can be. So I'm very confused to what happens to my team and my staff if we have nowhere to park.
Yeah, Christine, thank you. And I mean, it's great to kind of connect with you more recently about some of the stuff going on. Again, I'm happy to kind of continue the conversations, learning what your needs, your clients, employees. And again, we're really just trying to think about how do we use this like limited space that we have to make sure that it works well for everyone and meets our city goals.
And yeah, Christine, thank you.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Hi, this is Sarah Chester. I'm over with 789 Bakery on Highland Ave. I guess, Kate, one of the questions I have for you is I'm certainly looking forward to the November 17th meeting, and I understand we're going to get a lot more information there. I'm wondering what information we can get prior to that so that we can come to the meeting prepared with for if we have concerns, if those concerns are even necessary. And I'm also, I also just kind of, you know, you said one of the things that you're going to talk about at the meeting is the schedule for how this is going to go down with Highland Ave redesign. And I guess I wonder how much of that schedule is based on a plan that already exists versus how much are you gathering information right now to respond to the businesses and residents so as to create that plan?
Yeah, so I think I hear a couple of questions. So the first one, I just want to make sure I got this right, is what can we provide beforehand to the public meeting? And then the second one is more details about that schedule and kind of what that means. I just wanted to kind of clarify, there aren't any plans right now. This is just the first step in the process. We're really excited just to kind of have like a larger public conversation around like what do people want and how do we kind of meet all of these needs and in the directions that the mayor and the city council have asked us to go. And then what we can provide beforehand, I mean, I'll double check with my team, but one thing that we always like to do is just have everything in a public space so that anyone who is curious can look at that material prior. And that's often why we have things like public meetings so that we could put it all out there and then come back and see, you know, this is, what do you think and how do you feel? And if people are interested, and again, this is something like I was getting some thoughts from Nick on, is having more of a kind of business or merchants forum where we can respond directly or talk about those from that perspective. I'd be really interested in that if you are too, but again, I'm happy to just meet you where you are.
Awesome. Kate, thank you very much. Again, if you're able to hang out for the next 10 minutes and we have time for more questions, then I'd love to have both you and Erica around to be able to answer those. But we also have your contact info here on this slide. So thank you for providing kind of a lot of information on what's happening in mobility and how it relates to our business community.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Kate. Kate, you're a critical component of this whole process, and very happy to see you here, especially because the process has gone on for a while, and I think the city has kind of gotten over its skis to a degree. What the business community is seeing in the Chamber of Commerce is that there is kind of a saturation level of meetings. And to begin with, the business community, and particularly the workforce, are not a typical audience in public meetings. What we miss most of all in the process is a required public hearing, something that gets real notification, gets a number of days to prepare for, or 2 weeks, and it brings everybody to the attention that, hey, this is going to happen, this is what's planned. What happens to the business community is things are far out, the plans aren't made yet, and come to this evening meeting What should be done on Highland Ave right now is we have a number of staff people now at City Hall. The city staff should be going door to door and letting every business owner and their workforce know what's happening, because the bicycle community itself has determined that 10 to 25% of business is going to be lost. Now those are the advocates talking, saying that they've done intercept interviews on sidewalks with owners and workers and shoppers and so forth. You lose 10 to 25, we could imagine someone coming to each of us and saying, how about you give up 10% or 25% of your income this year? We've already had one business here tonight, this afternoon, say 45% of their business is from outside the city. That's a fact of life. That's city life. That's urban living. What we tend to do is to say, oh, 80% of the cars that come through the city are not stopping here. Well, I'm not sure that's quite true about not stopping here, because they do, as Tom said, go to the cleaners or pick up something at a food store in Magoon Square, etc. So the regional population does contribute to the economic vitality of the city. And I would challenge anybody to find me a store or a business in the city that makes a profit on its own zip code. Most businesses in our urban environment depend upon business from outside their zip code. And that doesn't all come on bicycles. So we're dealing with putting in, it's not about buses and bicycles versus cars. It's about city policy versus jobs and people. And so we look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, this is really, we invited Kate here today really just to share with us the overall work that the mobility department is doing, and the different ways that the businesses can participate. And there will be, a public forum for more specific details on the Highland Ave project, which I think I saw Daniela and Kate shared in the chat. So, but I appreciate your comments here. And I think with that, just doing a time check, we have 5 minutes. I want to hand it off to Margaret LaForest with, oh, there I went quick, the Mass Office of Business Development, just to share a couple updates. We might not have time for all of these, Margaret, and so we can leave a couple minutes for further questions. But yeah, feel free to introduce yourself and share away.
Great, thanks so much, Nick. My name is Margaret LaForest. I'm with the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. I'm part of the Baker Administration's Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. I try to join these, been joining a lot of these calls during COVID. I'm going to give you my contact information and welcome you to schedule a call, see how you can best leverage any of the state's resources as our ARPA funding rolls out too and programs get funded. I'll come back on here and talk about what those programs look like when those are ready. These are some just really around the workforce development resources that really everybody, many businesses can leverage. The on-the-job training pays up to 50% of wages for 6 months for employees. If you're onboarding and training, there's a little more nuance to that program that I encourage you to, visit their website. The Mass Hire Career Centers are located throughout the Commonwealth, and they're really that entry point to what it is on workforce development resources. I'm going to start with the BizWorks resource guide on the bottom. That's really the, save you opening from 100 windows on your computer here. You can kind of go by section. What is it that you're working on in your business? Is it a growing business? Is it starting your business? And they really lay out the resources kind of in a handbook for businesses. The Express Training Grant. You've probably heard me and a lot of these calls talk about the Workforce Training Fund program. When companies pay, and you're paying your employees with a W-2, you're going to notice a fee, WTFP, Workforce Training Fund program. Those are large grants, up to $250,000 over 3 years is the high end, but you can customize it. You don't have to use so much of it. Typically, there's one-to-one match requirement where the employer would pay the salary and benefits. We try to cost it out so there's no cash outlay out of pocket for the employer, and then the state you'd use the state's funding for the training dollars. The Express Workforce Training Fund program is up to $30,000. It's much easier to put together the Express grant, and right now they're paying 100% of the training. So if you have any training that you want to be doing for your employees, whether it's sales training, management training, de-escalation training, this year, with human resources being so, such a moving target, and oftentimes it's a collateral duty. Whoever's doing, the books might be doing your HR. Well, maybe now you want to certify someone in HR, just for example. So whatever it is, customizable. The link is here, and I'm happy to help answer any questions. And the last one I'm going to go with was the Biz Empower. You've probably heard a lot about Mass Growth Capital and the various grant programs they've had. This is kind of similar to GoFundMe, that if you match half, they'll give you basically a match on what you raise up to $40,000. There's a smaller Digital Empower up to $5,000. Both of them are requiring you connect with technical assistance. So the link is here. I do encourage you to reach out. There are resources available for your business. And again, I'm always glad to schedule a call. So I know it's a little over on our time today, but as any resources or something you're hearing about and trying to get connected to it, I encourage you to reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Margaret, thank you. There's a lot here. And for, I noticed with the Express Workforce Training Program grant, you have the options available are all on the state's directory, but included in there were, specific for training for restaurant workers, for hairstylists, for retailers. There just seems like a lot of options for small businesses, but as well as the corporate side of business as well.
Yep. It's customizable, but whatever your business needs are for training, there's a program for you. There's a grant program for you.
Okay. Any questions for Margaret? I'll leave it for Margaret first, and then we can open it up with our 1 minute left. Okay, seeing none, but again, thank you, Margaret, for coming by to share these resources with us. It is, we've probably put in close to 25 links in this chat, maybe a little overwhelming for folks. And I just saw you added your contact info in the chat as well, so thank you for doing that. At this point, I'd like to open it up to anyone else who would like to share a question, whether it's for economic development, for Kate, for Erica, for Margaret. I'm going to pull down our chat here so we can see each other. And yeah, thanks so much, guys. Okay, I would wait longer, but I realized it just turned 4, so I really had like maybe 10 seconds when we finished. So I guess that's good timing, unless there were lingering questions, in which case not great timing. But again, folks, thank you so much for joining us. We will be sharing the slide deck online, but also stay tuned for our for many of the events that will be happening in the next couple of weeks. I want to thank Kate, Erica, and Margaret for joining us today to share their perspectives and resources and opportunities to connect with the business community. And again, for folks who are not connected through our economic development channels, feel free to reach out to us at economicdevelopment@somervillema.gov, as well as our economic development newsletter. Best way to stay connected. All right, thanks so much, guys.